Hello, this is Heather Hoffman, and I'm here today to share a watercolored card using a beautiful image from the June 2020 Kit of the Month from Unity Stamp Company. I love doors. In a lot of my travels, the little bit I've done in Europe, I just always was fascinated. You wouldn't believe how many photos I have on my phone of cool doors, and this stamp image totally made me think of that. So I really wanted to just recreate that. Instead of stamping with black ink, I'm still using VersaFine because it's my favorite for watercolors, but I'm using vintage sepia, which is kind of a soft brown color. And about this spot, I realized I hadn't made my image square on my MISTI, so I stamped that door crooked, and we just can't have that. So I turned my watercolor cardstock over. This is Arch's cold press watercolor cardstock. And then I was able to line it up with the grid on my MISTI, get it straight, stamp it with that VersaFine ink. And again, that brown, I chose that because it's just a little softer and more neutral than a solid black. It wasn't quite no line watercoloring, but it kind of gave a different look. And then I stamped the sentiment up in the corner there with the exact same ink color. All right, now that I have this all stamped, you also might notice I stamped that main image of the door slightly off of the bottom left corner. It just kind of helped make it feel almost like the image just starts and just kind of blends off without ending there. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. I'm using Daniel Smith watercolors and just a simple, not a super expensive brush or anything, but have a little scrap of watercolor paper. So I kind of blend my colors together, test them a little until I get one that I like. And then I'm just going to kind of layer up color. I usually like to start with just kind of a softer bit of color, and then come in while it's still damp and drop a little bit of deeper color. It's kind of an easy way to let the water do the blending for you. Just a super simple, and I'm also leaving a little open space. I'm not trying to flood that whole area with color by dropping the color into each of those spaces where the bricks are. It gives me a little bit of ability to just let that kind of blend out and leave the white edges as a little bit of a highlight. And you can see there I'm just dropping in the darker color. And as you leave it there and give it a little time, the top one's already blending. The ones on the right, I think that paper dried a little more. So I'm just dropping a little bit more water in there to kind of help facilitate that blending so that it'll kind of smooth out over those bricks a little and kind of give a little bit of a seamless blend on there. And again, just add a little more water if it's not blending like you want it to. And then I like to blend off the edge of the image. So I'm using the same color here, but just far more watered down. And it's just adding a little hint of color, blending it out with water to the very outer edges. And again, that's going to kind of contribute to that feeling of this image just kind of fading off to the different distance and not really ending where you think it would be there. All right, I wanted kind of a cement stepway there, so I mixed black and white to get a nice soft gray. It seems kind of odd to use white for watercolor, but it seems like a really good way to soften your colors and get different tones in there as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause my talking and let you just watch the last little bit there of the watercoloring, and then I'll come back right at the end to fill you in on how I finish this card off. almost done watercoloring here. I'm just kind of finishing off the last little tidbits of color, and I've kind of moved around, letting certain areas dry while I worked on other places. That way I didn't have to worry about different colors blending together, and I could come in and add depth and shading like you see here on that door at the very end. All right, and then once I finished this, I went ahead and trimmed the panel down just slightly, and then I trimmed 2 opposite diagonal corners with a corner rounder and adhered it onto a coordinating card base that I had rounded the exact same corners on, just to add a little bit of difference and texture and shape to the card. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for coming by. Have a wonderful day.